Now, remember this stack, which is that we have amazing technology-based products improving in quality as well as variety because we have multiple separations of the flow from basic research down to applied science, engineering, university research, corporate R&D, product design and engineering, product management, and marketing and sales. However, in finance and economics, we have theoretical economists who are very, very theoretical, and then a complete vacuum, and then real-world finance. And that's why these very theoretical economists say things that anyone who operates in the real world will in fact find to be absurd, and you'll be astonished that anyone with a very high profile can think that. So here you have a very famous economist, Olivier Blanchard. Excluding people who have won a Nobel Prize in economics, he has one of the topmost resumes you could possibly have in this field. He was chief economist at the IMF for many years, 7 years, and now he is a chaired professor at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Now, that is very impressive within the credentials of this particular field, and almost anyone would defer to someone like this in the field of economics and believe, well, this is one of the topmost people in economics. Obviously, he knows what he's talking about. Now, remember, nothing personal towards him at all. He just says things that the vast majority of PhD economists believe because they all read the same 1950s era textbooks, and their career advancement is based on repeating the same memorized points back to each other. So there is no outside interaction or no outside input. Because look at what he said on Twitter. There was this tweet a few months ago that he wrote, which is that short of a direct effect on inflation expectations or mind control or price wage controls, to lower inflation, that's what he's referring to with this because there were other tweets before this that he had written. Lowering inflation requires slowing down the economy and thus increasing unemployment. That means to stop inflation that might arrive, it has not arrived yet, but that may arrive, you have to proactively make millions of people lose their jobs. And he continues, to me, the increase in unemployment is causal and needed to reduce inflation. So look at the beliefs inherent to this. One is that inflation is so bad that you have to preemptively take measures to halt it, including making millions of people lose their jobs. So the premise here is that having a job and paying slightly more for things like eggs and other necessities is worse than losing your job and then paying a little bit less for eggs and things like that. Would you rather pay 2% more for eggs and have a job, or pay 2% less for eggs while your income fell 100%? Remember, they only think in aggregates. The human cost of unemployment is something that they never face because these chaired professors and other elites don't ever experience unemployment themselves. They have 100% job security. Now, secondly, and this is even more jarring, look at this belief. He says, to me, the increase in unemployment is causal and needed to reduce inflation. So the assumption here is that when someone loses their job, suddenly their expenses stop. Now, how theoretical do you have to be to actually say something like this? Now, obviously, if someone went up to him and asked him right away to his face, he would say, no, your expenses still continue if your job goes. Yet when they are in economist mode and they have to repeat all the things they've memorized that nobody ever challenges them on, you see things like this. So one, inflation is such a bad thing that you have to proactively make people lose their jobs just to prevent the chance that inflation could arise. Inflation may not arise, you may not have to make people lose their jobs, but that's a very small price to pay to just halt this potential chance of inflation. And secondly, making people lose their jobs somehow makes their expenses stop. If you're relatively well off, then maybe 80% of your expenses are necessities and 20% are discretionary. If you're poor, then 100% are necessities and there's almost no discretionary spending, even in an advanced economy country. Yet making people lose their jobs with the goal of reducing demand is so inefficient. That's like saying if you're obese and you want to lose weight, the fastest way to lose your weight is to chop off your arm. Then yes, technically your weight goes down immediately. The problem is you will be much worse off and you will still be obese. You'll just be obese without an arm. Yet these very theoretical economists actually say things like this, and they're confident enough to come on Twitter, and I'll have the link to this in the description box below, but he's getting taken apart on Twitter because these people who only interact with other economists don't realize that they have not even thought through what they're saying, and on Twitter, the audience is not forgiving and much less impressed with credentials. So this is one of the topmost economists in the world, and he actually thinks that making people lose their jobs is preferable than having slightly higher inflation that may or may not even arise, and that when people lose their jobs, their expenses actually stop. And as I say in my final sentence in my retweet, no one knows less about economics than PhD economists. And these types of things abound everywhere. This is just one example. This playlist is going to have much more. But this is what these people think about how the real world works. If you lose your job, no big deal. Your expenses have stopped too. That's what the textbook told me. That's what these topmost, very decorated, very, very well credentialed, well paid, elite people who hobnob with heads of state, this is what they think. Thanks for watching.